massive mass destruction killing 5 teenagers in just 5 months, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris recorded some of their horrific torture and murder sessions for their own amusement. The two murderers were dubbed Toolbox Killers for their heinous acts. Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were a sadistically brutal serial rapist and killer duo who stalked teenage girls across the Los Angeles area for 5 bleak months in 1979, using devices for torturing their victims more commonly found in the garage. The group picked up hitchhikers from their van and drove them to remote locations where they carried out their worst rape and torture fantasies. FBI profiler John E. Douglas would later call Bittaker the most disturbing individual for whom he has ever created a criminal profile due to the pair's horrific crimes, particularly the Halloween torture and murder of Shirley Ledford. The prosecutor in their trial would later call the events of that Halloween night one of the most shocking, brutal cases in the history of American crime, after they were finally apprehended after a sickening 5-month murder spree. So where did the Toolbox Killers originate from? Lawrence Sigmund Bittaker was an infant when he was born on September 27, 1940. When he was still a teenager, he stole a car and was sent to the California Youth Authority. After he was released at 19, he lost contact with his adoptive parents. Bittaker spent the next 15 years incarcerated for various violent and theft-related crimes. He was labeled as highly manipulative and having considerable concealed hostility by the prison psychiatrist. Bittaker was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon in 1974 after stabbing a supermarket worker and narrowly missing his heart. He was sent to the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. Having been born on February 5, 1948, Roy Lewis Norris spent some time with his biological family but spent most of his early life in foster care. These families are accused of neglecting and abusing Norris. Norris left high school, enlisted in the Navy for a short time, and was eventually honorably discharged after receiving a diagnosis of severe schizoid personality from military psychologists. Norris violently attacked a female student with a rock on the San Diego State University campus in May 1970 while out on bail for another offense. Norris was convicted and spent nearly 5 years at Atascadero State Hospital as a sex offender with a mental disorder. As of 1975, Norris posed no further danger to others, and he was granted probation. After dragging a 27-year-old woman into the bushes, he raped her 3 months later. Norris and Bittaker, both future members of the Toolbox Killers, met in prison in 1976. By 1978, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were inseparable prison pals who shared a sick fixation on assaulting women. Bittaker confided to Norris that if he ever assaulted a woman, he would kill her to avoid leaving behind a witness, while Norris said that his greatest thrill was overwhelming women with fear and terror. Both men had fantasized about committing SA and murdering teenagers, and upon their release from prison, they promised to reunite and carry out their plans to kill one girl from each of the ages 13 to 19. Bittaker was made available to the public in November of 1978, and Norris was made available to the public in January of 1979. Norris had already assaulted a woman within a month's time. Then, as promised, Bittaker wrote to Norris, and the two eventually met up to start implementing their sick prison plot. It would be difficult to abduct teenagers covertly without a reliable vehicle. In February of 1979, Bittaker bought a silver 1977 GMC Vandura after Norris offered to front the money for a van. They could approach potential victims without having to fully slide the door open, thanks to the passenger side sliding door. They had so much fun with the name Murder Mac that it was applied to their van. From February to June of 1979, the two picked up over 20 hitchhikers, but they did not assault any of these women, they were just practicing. In late April of 1979, while conducting reconnaissance for a safe haven, they discovered a remote fire road in the San Gabriel Mountains. Bittaker used a crowbar to break the lock on the gate, and then he replaced it with his own. According to Ronald Markmans, a court psychiatrist, alone with the devil. The torture apparatus was assembled by Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris in their final stages of preparation. The Toolbox killers stocked up on the means to act out their sadistic fantasies: plastic tape, pliers, rope, knives, an ice pick, a Polaroid camera, and a tape recorder. Bittaker allegedly planned to construct a small town in which kidnapped adolescent girls would be held captive, chained, tortured, and forced to engage in sex acts, as detailed in the book Disguise of Sanity: Serial Mass Murders. The pair kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered 4 girls between the ages of 13 and 17 between late June and September of 1979. The girls' screams were lost forever in the mountain canyons as they were driven to the Mountain Fire Road and tortured with an assortment of tools. Bittaker began using wire from a coat hanger tightened with pliers after realizing that manual strangulation was more difficult than it looked on screen. When they moved on to Andrea Hall as their second victim, the level of depravity rose. Bittaker put an ice pick through her ear, tried the other side, and then stomped on the handle in the mountains until it broke. Hall miraculously survived until Bittaker strangled her, and then she and her accomplice tossed her off a cliff. Victims of Bittaker and Norris reported increasing levels of fear, pain, and sexual assault. Only serial killers Leonard Lake and Charles Ng would one day surpass the pair in terms of evil. 2 younger girls were kidnapped while hitchhiking on September 2nd. Bittaker recorded Jacqueline Gilliam, 15, as she was repeatedly raped by both men. While torturing Gilliam with questions about why he shouldn't kill her, Bittaker photographed her in various naked states of distress. Leo Lamp, age 13, was sedated and left alone. Bittaker terrorized Gilliam for 2 days before finally killing her by sticking an ice pick through her ear and strangling her with a coat hanger and pliers. The Toolbox killers awakened Lamp as she exited the van, and struck her over the head with a sledgehammer. After being strangled by Bittaker and repeatedly beaten by Norris with a hammer, the 2 girls' bodies were dumped down a ravine. Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris raped 16-year-old Shirley Ledford multiple times while recording their sickening acts of brutality and torture for their sick enjoyment. Ledford left her restaurant shift late on Halloween night 1979 in order to attend a party in a coworker's car. Ledford decided to walk or hitchhike home from a gas station instead of attending the party, and it's possible that she recognized Bittaker as a customer from the restaurant and decided to ride with him. Ledford was handcuffed and gagged right away while Bittaker started his tape recorder. For 2 hours, Ledford endured unspeakable horror as the 2 of them took turns driving, raping, and torturing her in a van. Both men urged Ledford to raise her voice so the tape would capture the brutality of Bittaker's beatings with the sledgehammer and the pliers he used to twist, squeeze, and tear at her body parts. Ledford can be heard pleading for death after Norris repeatedly hammered her elbow and then strangled her with a coat hanger and pliers. Shirley Ledford's body was left in a gruesome display on the front lawn of a nearby house after Bittaker and Norris were finished with her. Roy Norris told another convicted rapist about the assaults and murders he and his partner committed, including the one unaccounted-for victim from Toolbox, Ledford. Moreover, Norris revealed that another woman had been assaulted by them and then released. Norris contacted police through his lawyer, and officers were able to positively identify several missing teenage girls from reports filed over the previous 5 months as matching the descriptions given by Norris. Another incident involving a young woman being dragged into a GMC van and raped by 2 men in their mid-30s occurred on September 30th. The rape victim was shown photos of Bittaker and Norris and positively identified them. Bittaker was apprehended for rape at Norris Motel on the same day, November 20, 1979, that Norris was arrested for a parole violation. A bracelet belonging to Ledford was discovered during a search of Norris' apartment, and numerous photographs and other pieces of evidence were uncovered during a search of Bittaker's motel room. Authorities searched Bittaker's silver van and took several items, including several cassette tapes, one of which contained Ledford's torture. After hearing the recording, Ledford's mother knew it was her daughter pleading for her own life. The voices on the tape were identified as belonging to Bittaker and Norris by the investigators. When confronted with the evidence, Norris eventually admitted to 5 murders he had been accused of committing at first. While negotiating a plea deal with prosecutors, Norris led them to the San Gabriel Mountains, where they discovered the skeletal remains of Gilliam and Lamb. Lamb's skull showed signs of blunt force trauma, and Gilliam still had the lodged ice pick. After pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty, Roy Norris was given a sentence of 45 years to life in prison on May 7, 1980, with the possibility of parole in 2010. The trial of Lawrence Bittaker started on January 19, 1981. Norris testified to their history together and their involvement in 5 murders. One of Bittaker's motel guests testified under oath that Bittaker had shown him naked photos of distraught girls and claimed that he had killed one of them. According to court documents, another 17-year-old girl testified that Bittaker had played her a cassette tape, apparently the assault of Gilliam. There was then a 17-minute audio recording of Shirley Ledford played for the jury, and many of them cried, their heads in their hands. Even though Bittaker sat through the entire ordeal while prosecutor Stephen K. cried, he remains unfazed. The weeks before his arrest, Norris told Bittaker he entertained himself by listening to the tape in the car. Bittaker took the stand on February 5 and denied both assault and murder, saying he paid the girls for intimate relations and permission to take their photographs. When closing arguments were complete, Prosecutor K asked the jury, if the death penalty is not appropriate in this case, then when will it ever be? A jury found Bittaker guilty on February 17 of 5 counts of first-degree murder and several other charges. He was sentenced to death on February 19. Bittaker never expressed remorse for his crimes while on death row, despite multiple appeals and stays of execution, but he did seem to enjoy his celebrity status, signing items with the name Pliers Bittaker. On December 13, 2019, he passed away while serving time at San Quentin State Prison. On February 24, 2020, Norris passed away of natural causes while incarcerated. According to the Daily Breeze, Stephen K. has been having nightmares since the brutality of the Toolbox killers. As usual, he'd make a beeline for Bittaker's van in an effort to rescue the girls just in time to find that he was already too late. In the meantime, the FBI has kept Shirley Ledford's tape and continues to use it to educate new agents on the brutality of torture and murder.